Hello and welcome to Transform Yourself TV. I'm Adam Farr, and this is the show that shines the light on the secrets behind physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual transformation. I'm here to teach you how you could transform your body, your mind, and your life once and for all. Stay tuned, I have a great show for you today. The subject of today's episode is how to fix your emotional energy leaks with the science of the Enneagram. It's going to be a great show. I want you to tune in, pump up the volume, and buckle up. The number one reason that you're not able to get to where you want to go in life, you're not achieving the goals you want to achieve, you're not becoming the person you want to become, is because you're wasting energy. You're wasting emotional energy on habits, on automated behavior, on reactivity. We all have a past, we all have a history that has colored our perceptions, our belief systems, and who we are today. And most of us are not aware of how that past history has turned us into a tape recorder that will replay events subconsciously in our mind and make us reactive instead of responsive. Most of us don't realize that if you're unaware of why you believe what you believe, or why you react the way you react, whether it be in situations of stress, at work, with a spouse, when it comes to adopting a healthy lifestyle, if you don't understand why you go to the fridge to drink a soda, or why you go to the cupboard to snack on chips when you're stressed out, if you don't understand why you're yelling at your spouse, or why you refuse to go to the gym, or why you sign up to the gym in the new year and then never actually visit, right? Why do you keep on self-sabotaging yourself or living under your greatest capacity? What's going on? There are underlying emotional feelings, beliefs that are programmed in your subconscious mind that are keeping you from changing, from transforming yourself. A lot of the people I work with, they want to transform, they want to change primarily physically, but they believe that the physical change will lead to an emotional, mental, spiritual change. That if I look a certain way, I'm going to have confidence. That if I look a certain way, people are going to treat me differently. That if I look a certain way, I'm going to experience more success in my life. It's not necessarily true. In fact, you could find many people out there, by example, many people who look a certain way, but they don't have the things you're describing. They don't have confidence. They don't have success outside of, the way their body looks. They don't have great relationships. Well, why is that? Right? And so people come to me saying, I want to change the way I look. I also want to improve my health, right? I want to fix my gut. I want to get rid of these emotions, but underlying the process that allows you to get better in those areas is an understanding of where your beliefs, your thoughts come from, and the emotions you have about them. Are you choosing your emotions? Are you choosing your beliefs? Or did they choose you? And now they're just running on autopilot. What's going on? Years ago, I got in a near-fatal car accident, which changed my life forever. Prior to this car accident, I was living somewhat of an adrenaline junkie lifestyle. I was racing motorcycles, climbing mountains. I was in the military. I was doing dangerous things. I was risking my life, to put it bluntly, at times. And I was doing this because I was chasing an experience. I was chasing an emotion. I wanted to feel alive. And I thought that my identity was wrapped up in this lifestyle. This superhero action figure lifestyle. I wanted to be exciting. I thought success in life is being an exciting person. And one day I got in this car accident and I had to stop everything. I had a neck brace on. I broke my neck and I couldn't pursue that lifestyle anymore. I couldn't even go to the gym anymore. I lost about 25, 30 pounds of muscle in the span of a year. And I became this skinny, depressed, fat, depressed person who had nothing to entertain himself with except his own thoughts. And sitting there alone for months and months and months forced me to look within myself and to ask myself, what is it that I truly want? Was the life I was living really the life that I was meant to live? Was it really satisfying me at a deeper level? And I realized it wasn't satisfying me. I realized I was doing all those things for the wrong reasons. And so I spent a lot of my time just sitting with myself and reading and contemplating things. And I came across a subject matter through my research during those times. I came across a system called the Enneagram typing system. It's like a personality test. And I took this test. I was interested in knowing more about myself. I had no one really to know at that point except myself. So I took this test and I got a few books on the subject and I started to study it. And I was absolutely amazed by how accurate this particular test was in describing me to the T. Now, not just shallow character traits, like my tendency to like physical activity or my hardworking nature or whatever it may be. It described why I reacted the way I reacted to certain people in my life or to certain situations in my life. It basically unwrapped the childhood experiences that programmed my brain to make me at the time. A lot of people say that they don't like these personality tests because they put you in a box. And, in studying the Enneagram, I realized that we all fit in a box. And it takes a certain degree of awareness and understanding and information to realize that you're in this box unless you climb out of it. You're in this box from the get-go unless you bring awareness to what you're doing and you choose to climb out of the box into situations where otherwise you would be reactive. This is what I learned from using this particular system. In studying the Enneagram, I discovered that I was wasting a lot of my energy on old programs, old emotional programs that were keeping me from doing the work that I needed to do. I was still harboring feelings of resentment and anger and frustration about things that happened in my life in the past. I was still reactive to certain people in the past, and things would happen, right? Things would trigger me to become angry, frustrated. Things would trigger my self-doubt. Life would happen, right? And I would be overwhelmed with these reactive emotions. And I didn't know where they were come from. I just thought it was my personal preference. And this made me upset or that made me upset, right? And I thought that's the way it is, right? We're all individuals and things upset us. But I didn't understand why they upset me. And I didn't understand that being upset was an energy drain. Being angry at people, at situations, at the world, being angry at myself for getting in a car accident and breaking my neck, being angry at my friends who I felt abandoned me. Being angry was a waste of my time. And that same amount of energy that I was using to be angry and frustrated could have been used to create something different. I could have used that to create a new future. And so when I'm working with someone and they tell me they want to change, underlying their capacity or lack of capacity to change is an understanding of where do their emotions come from, the ones that sabotage them. And can you isolate that emotion and can you get rid of it? Get rid of the emotion that doesn't serve you and switch it out for something that does serve you. How do you do that? Well, in studying the Enneagram, I started to develop compassion and empathy, not only for myself, and first and foremost, it must be for yourself. You must develop compassion and empathy for yourself, for your history, but also the people in my life that had forged the identity I had at that point. The people in my life that basically contributed to who I am, part of, my understanding of the world. So in learning this information, I developed compassion for myself, empathy for myself, for the situations I had gone through, and I realized where they were coming from. They were coming from a mindset of a broken inner child, a scared inner child, someone who was just trying to figure out how the world works and to make sense of everything. And that early programming in my childhood has been carried into my adulthood. And that programming, that early programming, hadn't been updated for 10 to 15 years, right? My understanding of the world was based on experiences and traumas that I experienced as a child. And now as an adult, I was still reacting to the world based on that underlying belief system. And it was screwing me up. It was making me angry. It was draining my emotional energy, and it was keeping me from becoming who I wanted to be. And because of that, there was this underlying feeling that I was not living in coherence with my purpose. I was not living the life I was meant to live. And I felt like there was this hole or this gap, in my heart about who I wanted to be and where I actually was. And this was, the underlying reason why I was having difficulty moving forward. There was this emotional energy drain. That same amount of energy that I used to spend on anger and frustration and self-doubt is now being spent on creativity. Now on this day, after so many years of self-discovery and contemplation, on this day and on the days that have been surrounding this day, I have been using that energy to be creative and move towards an image of myself that is more in alignment with who I really want to be. It's my belief that what really keeps us from becoming who we're meant to be is this internal chatter that we have running in the back of our head that we're not aware of unless we're spending a lot of time alone. This internal chatter, this belief system that's operating without our awareness, when you're distracted, when you're in the workplace, when you're around friends and family, there's a framework running in the back of your head that's telling you what everything means. What is the meaning behind this event? What is the meaning behind this person's response to what you just said? What is the meaning behind the physical feelings happening in your gut and your body? What is the meaning behind it? And so you develop early on, a structure or a framework that assigns meaning to everything. And that structure or framework is something that is given to you based on your life experiences. You don't get to choose it initially, right? You grow up, you're a young kid, and things happen in your life, and you try to process the information as best you can, but your processing of that information doesn't necessarily reflect the reality of events. If you're 7, 8 years old, and you're in this hypnagogic state where you're observing your parents fight, or you witness some violence down the street, or something happens to you, or someone yells at you, you process that information and you develop a set of rules at a very early age about how the world works, what people are like, and your place in it. And this set of rules needs to be switched out once you become an adult. You need to learn that what happened in the past should not reflect the present because it's holding you back. It's draining your emotional energy, right? It's subconscious. It's under the radar. You don't really feel it. You don't really sense it as it's happening, but you are reactive more than anything. And you need to develop a sense of where all this comes from. So you know what to look for when an event happens. You know exactly what to look for when you're in a situation that would otherwise trigger you and or sabotage you. You need to know because you need to develop choice. You need to have more willpower and free will, actually, when it comes to the events that take place in your life. You need to choose at every moment throughout the day. You need to make a choice. And that choice is either optimal or suboptimal. It either brings you closer to your dreams and your goals, or it brings you further away, or you go nowhere at all. And if you don't have awareness about the underlying causality behind that process, if you're not aware of where it's coming from, then you're reactive. You're not responsive. You're not choosing anymore. And if you don't choose every minute of every day, if you're not choosing what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're responding to people, then you're going to end up somewhere you don't want to be. And this is usually when people come to me when their body starts to break down and they're developing illnesses and diseases and they have a bunch of weight to lose and they don't understand what happened. Well, it's because you haven't been living in awareness. The Enneagram will help you recognize those moments in your life where you're acting in a way that's disintegrated. You're not integrated with your values, with your underlying beliefs, your true underlying beliefs, your true motives, right? When you're acting in a way that's disintegrated, you're scattered, you're reactive. And when you study the Enneagram, when you take the tests, you get to read your personal profile, and you start to formulate a picture of why you like what you like, why you dislike what you like. And you could catch yourself in those moments where you are acting in a way that is disintegrated, when you're acting in a way that is not conducive to what you ultimately want, something that's not conducive to you becoming your best possible self. Do you even know what your best possible self looks like and what your worst possible self looks like? The Enneagram will point that out for you. It'll say, hey, more or less, within 95% accurately, this is how you look at your best, and this is how you look at your worst. And when events in your life happen, you could say, oh my gosh, what just happened? How did I respond to that person there? That's me at my worst. Do I want to be my worst, or do I want to be my best? And you could stop yourself before those moments, and you could actually make a choice, right? You've increased your ability to have free will. Free will is something that only comes around when there's awareness and knowledge behind the choices you make. If you don't have self-knowledge, if you're unaware of where your mind comes from, then you don't have as much choice as you think. And that's why your life might end up being in a position you don't want it to be. And people say things like, oh, where has time gone? Oh, life is not how I thought it would turn out. My childhood dreams, those are just fantasies. This is the real world. These pessimistic worldviews are ultimately rooted in a lack of understanding of who you are, how your brain works to create your future. And this all starts in self-awareness, self-knowledge. When you recognize and understand who you are now and where you are in relation to your highest potential self, and the Enneagram will point that out for you, who you could be, when someone or something clearly defines who you could be, and that inspires you, well, then you can move towards it. If you're sitting there right now and I told you, who are you, as your best self, right? If you were to describe yourself, the best possible version of you, can you do it? Most people would be at a loss for words because they never really spent the time thinking about it. And the truth is, we all have our own unique best selves, our highest selves. And, there's two types of motivation in life. There's the motivation that you move towards something you want. You move towards love, right? Something you want more of. And there's a fear motivation. You move away from something you don't want. Most of us are motivated by fear. We move away from things we don't want. We don't want to be poor. We don't want to be alone. We don't want to be unhealthy. But these aren't really strong motivators. They're not the type of motivators that allow you to create. They're the type of motivators that allow you to avoid. In the world of marketing, a lot of people will bring to your attention the things you don't want, and they'll say, buy my product. If you don't want to be fat, you should buy this product. If you don't want to be poor, you should buy this product. If you don't want to be unhappy or alone, buy this product. And most of us are triggered by these advertisements, and we actually end up buying the products. But at the root of the problem is that person is operating under a fear motivation. They're trying to avoid something. And so you could spend your whole life running away from what you don't want. But that doesn't mean you're going to go in a direction where there isn't more danger, where there isn't more problems. But if instead you're very clear on what you do want, who you do want to become, then you could run exclusively towards that. You could spend all your emotional energy, all your focus, all your drive, all your willpower moving towards the one thing you do want at the exclusion of everything else. Everything else will be pushed out of the way. And guess what? Eventually you will find that one thing that you want. But you have to know what it is. You have to know who you are. Because if you don't know who you are and who you're becoming, then how are you going to get what you want? You have to become a person, a different person, to get what you want in your life. You have to develop qualities and character traits and ideas and belief systems and emotions you do not yet have. You have not yet mastered. You have to develop these things first. And it all starts with your self-image. Are you clear on who you want to become? And are you moving towards your highest self? Or are you moving away from things that scare you? Don't drain your emotional energy. So I'm talking about the Enneagram. It's basically a psychological typing system. I'm going to use an example. It's kind of like Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs test is something that a lot of people have done, but it goes so much deeper than any of those other tests out there. The depth and scope of this subject is something you could literally spend decades studying and still not master. It's so complex, and it's so enlightening when it comes to what it tells you about yourself. So what is the Enneagram? I'm talking about the Enneagram here. It's a psychological typing system. It puts you in a box, right? And, there are many typing systems out there that do that. Myers-Briggs is one of them that comes to mind. But it's very different from Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs will put you in a box and it'll say, this is who you are right now. It'll take a snapshot of who you are right now at that moment when you take the test. And it'll stop there, and you'll look at the results of the test and you'll say, yeah, that's pretty much how I am right now at that moment. But it doesn't describe to you why you're there. What are the underlying motives and drivers? What are the underlying fears and reasons for you to become that particular psychological type? We are types of people. We're not all unique. I mean, we are all unique. We're all unique snowflakes, right? But we're all snowflakes too. And there are only so many structures to a snowflake that you could possibly have. And these typing systems basically categorize your psychological type into a structure that you could then recognize as being true or false or whatever. And this is useful information because it allows you to make sense of who you are. Now, the Enneagram goes a lot further. It tells you why you are that way, what got you there, right? And most importantly, it tells you how you could get out of that box and have freedom in the choices that you make. I mentioned earlier, many of us are reactive. We're reactive to the world. We're on autopilot. We're doing things that we think we're making choices, but ultimately we're living in fear. We're always moving away from what we fear. And we're really not free agents when you think of it that way. We're always moving away from fear. We are at the whim of the things that scare us. Why are we scared? What is it that's keeping us from moving towards what we really want? And, most of us want the same things. We want wealth, we want health, and we want happiness. But how many of us actually get all of those things? Very few. Why? Because we're living automatically. We're living in this box. We're living in a reactive state. And because we're living in this reactive state, life passes us by. The opportunities that present themselves to us pass us by, and we don't get to where we want to go at the end of the day. And 10 years, 20 years, 30 years pass, and you say, where did the time go? And you kind of look at your curriculum vitae, you look at your CV, and you say, you know what? That's not that impressive. I'm not like the highest achievers out there in the world. I'm not like some of the people I read about in the books or in the movies. I'm not like that. Why? Because you spent your life in fear. You didn't chase what you want. You ran away from what you didn't want. And people get confused about that distinction. They think like, oh yes, I am motivated. I do know what I want. No, you know exactly what you don't want. If you're not creating every day, if you're not creating exactly what you want in life at the exclusion of everything else, then you're going to be afraid. And there's nothing to be afraid of when you know exactly what you want, because you can move towards that every day, and it's like wearing horse blinders. Nothing else concerns you. And all of a sudden, money problems, social problems, things of that nature, not that you shouldn't address these things, but they don't bother you as much. You go ahead, you're responsible, you address them, but you're not, your heart isn't palpitating with anxiety at night thinking about all your problems. We all have problems, but some of us will handle it much better than others. Clarity of purpose, clarity of who you are, the person you're meant to be, is at the root of that. The Enneagram teaches you that. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the EnneagramInstitute.com. I want you to take the RHETI test, the RHETI test, the Riso-Hudson Enneagram Type Indicator test. It's about $12 right now. And take that test, read your profile. But that's not enough, all right? Because that's a very shallow interpretation that you're going to get after you've done the test, they're going to have a very basic overview of what type you are, right? And where you fit on the spectrum. After that, you have to get a book. You really have to get a book. And the first thing you do is you get this book and you read your profile. There's pages and pages and pages on each type of person. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of permutations per person. It's not just like having, a couple dozen of possible character types. There are literally hundreds of possible permutations you could be on in terms of the spectrum. Get the book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram. Once you've read your profile on the wisdom of the Enneagram, you could read through the whole book. After that book, get the book Personality Types. And finally, after that, get Understanding the Enneagram. All by the same authors, Don Riso and Russ Hudson. I'll put the links in the description. That's your first step. If you like what you've just watched, you could show your support by doing one of the following. Subscribe to this channel, join my mailing list for exclusive how-to content, listen to my radio show, or follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. And you can visit my website at www.transformyourselfuniversity.com.